Welcome back, everybody. I hope you generally know the layout of everything or the major components of Curea, Ultimaker. Now I'm going to open up a file and we can kind of go through the process of setting up or changing our settings for printing. So I'm just going to open file. And generally we're going to be looking for .obj file or .stl file. I'm going to go to my sample files and I'm just going to pick this one for right now, which I believe is a saxophone from the Smithsonian's collection. A lot of museums recently have done this cool thing where they will 3D scan different objects and post them online so you can look at them. It's another way of bringing historical artifacts to everybody. But the cool thing about this is you can also 3D print things. And with some of these objects, I'm going to kind of show you the process of manipulating things, moving things around, and what things to look out for when you're printing. And maybe that's you're printing your piece or you're downloading a piece and things like that. So the Ultimaker, took a little bit of time to get that print in here, and we can see that it actually scaled it a little bit smaller. Again, 3-button mouse is really going to help you make this work right. I'm going to bring the microphone over here. And we can see that there's this saxophone. And right now I can immediately see that it's kind of just laying flat there. I mean, one part of this model is it doesn't really have any flat surfaces. I can also see that it actually has quite a lot of detail with the different moving parts and things like that. The first thing I want to consider is the support structure. Now, there's a lot of overhanging pieces. There's overhanging pieces everywhere. And when I want to move this object around, I want to think, what's the best way to get some of this detail, but also to maybe have less support structure? And generally what I tell people is try to turn and manipulate an object if it doesn't have any immediate flat surfaces to adhere to the bed, to make it as upright as possible. That way you kind of eliminate as much support structure as you need. If I printed this as it were right now, looking at it from this view, this area all underneath the saxophone would have support structure. And it might, these details might look a little gross, essentially, when they come out. Or they might not even be connected as well, depending on the orientation of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it so it's much more vertical. That way I don't have so much support structure because most of it will be, close to 0 degrees off center. And most of it will print without support structure. Now this also just popped up, is that your model is not manifold. The highlighted areas indicate either missing or extraneous surfaces. This can happen sometimes with downloaded parts. I'm surprised it's not really showing up, but we'll definitely see it in some of the other models we're going through. I'm going to close this out for now. Now to manipulate this upright, I'm going to select the object, and it's going to kind of highlight it in blue, and then I'm going to have some options over here. And to just rotate it, I can come over here to this sort of little rotating icon. Rotate it. And I can rotate it up or down using these different arrows. It's pretty similar to the gumball option we have in Rhino. Now, snap rotation automatically will snap it to certain degrees, like every 15 degrees it'll snap it. If you turn the snap off, then you can have a little bit more freedom to change it a couple of degrees or so. So it's a good idea to maybe adjust it with the snap on, and then if you need to do some fine tuning to change it from there. So I've put it upright, and that's helpful because it's also, those layers are going to be chopping up similar to the bed, or at least that orientation. Now, what I can also do is I can also rotate it in this direction, which also might help. I can get away with, 40 degrees off center or so, and if I can try to minimize that amount of support structure, the piece is going to come out cleaner and it's going to come out quicker. So up here, there's going to be a lot of support structure needed because it's overhanging by quite a bit. If I can manipulate that maybe a little bit, I can try to minimize the support structure needed. So I'm just going to try to go, let's see what 10 degrees does there. And you might have to go back and forth, changing it and editing it. Just to show you some of the other commands, what we can do is you can reset the model to when it imported, lay flat. What that's going to do is it's going to try to find a flat surface in its sort of immediate orientation. So if I hit lay flat, it's going to calculate where's the flattest part of it within, 20 or so degrees, and it's going to try to just rotate it automatically. And it's probably not really going to do much. I'm just going to close. Oh, there we go. It's saying that is the most sort of flat spot, which is essentially looking like it's just also put some of it into the bed, which, that's not always a great case, but if you do use the lay flat option, you want to get it into an orientation. Oh, look at that. It kind of figured itself out, popped itself out of the floor. Now that has also made it a little worse because then we're going to have like a whole bunch of support structure. You can also select a face to line it up with. I recommend what you do is to get it in place roughly to where you want it, you think it's good, and then do the lay flat option. I'm actually going to Command Z that, undo it, because I like where it was before. And let's go over some of the other options. Now this is just moving. You can move it around into different areas on the build plate. You don't have to stay right in the middle. You can move things forward or left, right. You can't really move up and down. It tries to just adhere the lowest part to the bed, and that's just to make printing quicker. Like, why would you need to print all that extra support material? This is the scale command. I'm going to leave it this scale right now just as an example, but I could potentially make this much bigger and maybe the whole size of the build plate if I wanted to. And standard 3D models are in millimeters, so just be aware of that. Now, 25 millimeters, 25.4 millimeters roughly equals an inch, or 2.54 centimeters. Just kind of keep that in mind. So the X direction, so from this point to the end of the saxophone to the reed up here, that's going to be about an inch. We've also got options to mirror things, or rotate things in that fashion, or flip it around, things like that. This is changing what kind of essentially object you're going to make. If I wanted to print this as support structure, I could print it as support structure, but we're going to keep most models just normal. And now without changing any settings, I'm just going to do normal, 20% infill, my support structure is on, hit that. And right down here, I'm just going to hit the slice button, slice. And it's going to calculate essentially the tool paths and tell you how long your model is going to take to print. I need the Jeopardy theme song. Now this model, I'm not actually going to print this model. It's actually got a lot of detail, which is super cool. But look at all these little parts. At the scale that I'm actually working on with this, the 3D printer could never really print that kind of detail. It's just so small, and it'll actually probably gum up the model because it's trying to extrude plastic in these little areas, and it's just going to look really, really rough. So this is one of those cases where if I actually did want to print it, I would want to scale it up to be much larger. Or try to remove some of these details from the model itself. Now it's finished and it's saying it's going to take approximately 1 hour 20 minutes. I would always add 20% to that. I would say it's going to take 1 hour and probably more like 45 minutes. And then it's going to tell you how much filament it's going to use. Now let's take a look at this. We can go to preview. And it's going to show us our different slices. It's processing layers. Now when we go to preview mode, we're going to see everything here. It's not really letting me move around. We can also play this if we would like. But I'm not really going to bother with that because that's also essentially animating a simulated version of a printer head. But what's important to me is this scroll bar over here. I can scroll down to see all the layers. So if I start at layer 1, what it's printing right here is it's printing a skirt, which is essentially a number of just single layer lines just to create sort of a bigger footprint for the support structure and the model to print on. And as I move up to the layers, it's going to show all the different layers. And right now, that's mostly support structure. Right down here, you can see this area is one of the first layers where there is going to be an object. And it's going to move up slowly and construct the print. Now, here you can see, bear with me. Look at this right here. That's like some detail things that are so small, it's really going to be hard to print those. And if you break off the support structure, it's probably going to break that off as well. Now this is actually, this inner part is the infill. You can see these triangles here. And you can see the first layer, second layer, third layer, and then this infill layer. Now as I move up, zoom out a little bit, too far. As I move up, one problem is that the print actually stops printing right about here. You can see that there's still some silhouette of the horn, but it can't actually print it because it's so thin. So what I might want to do is if I really want to try to print this, I might go back and change the custom settings up here and change my shell layer to be much more refined, or I would have to make the model bigger. All right, and I'm just going to keep going up. And you can see all of this. This is support structure. I'm just going to keep going up all the way. And so, we were able to minimize some of the support structure, but it really, had to be there for some of it. So I'm just going to quickly go back to prepare, and I'm going to lay this down. Put my snap on, 90 degrees. Oh, come on now. There we go. And I'm just going to slice it in this orientation just to show you what the difference is between this footprint and the other footprint and the difference in support structure. Now up here you can go to different options with Curea. For example, there's the preview view, which when you hit preview, it goes to the same thing in monitor if it were connected to a printer. So I'm going to hit preview. And you can see that there's quite a bit of support structure under here and quite a bigger footprint. Now you can also see how these layers are going to make the object stratified, right? But the stratification is in a different orientation or different direction, going sort of vertically along the saxophone. So that's also something to consider when you're printing an object, is where do you want that stratification? Where do you want those lines? Sometimes you can put it, you can orient your model to be in a specific orientation so that those stratifications maybe make your piece stronger or aesthetically helps your piece. I don't think it really works with the saxophone. I think it kind of makes it look a little weird. It's kind of wild with all this little detail too. But anyway, that's just a sample of this piece. We're going to kind of go over changing custom details in the next video.